Welcome out to Bruin Bible Live. Will Decker, your host, the madman, Jamal Madney to my right. Heartbreaking loss today in Salt Lake City at Rice-Eccles Stadium as Utah wins 14-7 in a game that felt so close at times, and UCLA just couldn't do the little things to kind of get over the top in this ball game. And, it was a game dominated by two front sevens. I think we can definitely start with that. UCLA, 4 team sacks, 11 tackles for a loss. Utah up them with 7 sacks of their own and 11 tackles for a loss. What do we take away from this game, Madman? Because, I think on the surface, I think UCLA just moving forward, that offensive line has some serious problems, and it's going to have to be addressed if they want to be serious contenders within the Pac-12 moving forward.
Yeah, Will, I think you said it really well. For me, I'm walking away with about 3 or 4 different insights as in terms of just the reaction of this game ending just a few minutes ago. The first, we have to start with that offensive line. They just look completely overmatched. Now, granted, they were playing one of the best front sevens in the conference in Utah. Their scheme, their coaching, their culture, what they do in the weight room, what they do from a nutrition standpoint, the guys that they go out and recruit. So it was definitely a top end type of front seven that they were playing. But let's not forget, Utah had a litany of injuries coming into this game, and that only sort of magnified over the course of the game. So the fact that this offensive line struggled to the extent that they did was very, very problematic. And you and I have talked at nauseum, Will, about the journey. We saw last year's journey of this offensive line starting in Bowling Green and getting to a place of being one of the strongest lines in the conference. This is going to need a gargantuan journey, more so than even last year, to get to where they need to go, because Oregon State is built very similarly to Utah. USC is just so loaded offensively that they're going to need to be able to have time for Dante to compete in that game. There's other games on this schedule where offenses are so explosive, you're going to give Dante some time. So for me, number one, offensive line. Number two, Will, related to that, I think we saw a lot of Dante Moore's nuances today. And again, true freshman, 18-year-old. He's the future of the program. He's going to be a superstar. You could even see it in some flashes of throws. That first ball to Carson Ryan in the first half, Will, was an absolute dime. He dropped one to Loya on the sideline there, late third quarter, another dime.
Beautiful.
You saw the gifted nature of this young man. But what you also saw was 2 things really struck me, Will, when the pressure came. And when the pressure came, 2 things happened with Dante. One is he started betraying his mechanics. And you saw him throwing off of the wrong foot, jumping and throwing. You saw different arm angles, sidearm, 3/4. He never really got comfortable from a mechanic standpoint and kind of betrayed his mechanics with that litany of the pressure. And then secondly, he didn't know when to utilize the check down. And I've been saying this now for a couple of weeks. I was hoping this would be the Kyle Ford game for UCLA, and it kind of needed to be, because he was constantly sort of looking down the field. The clock in his head wasn't quite refined yet and still trying to make these big plays happen. And it led to mistakes. It led to sacks. It led to UCLA being behind the chains. And then third, Will, we have to talk about UCLA's own front seven. What a heroic performance that was, knowing how much the offense was struggling. You were almost waiting for this front seven to finally kind of show some cracks, maybe lose their encouragement, lose their will, and ultimately have Utah create separation. It never happened. The player of the game for me, Will, far and away was Kane Medrano. The 10 tackles, the 2.5 tackles for loss, the 2 sacks. He was all over the place. Obviously, the Murphy twins came in, did some great things. I think there was just Keanu was terrific. Toya didn't, sort of was clogging the lane in the middle. Gary Smith was doing an outstanding job. I mean, this front seven is really top end of this conference and is going to keep this team in a lot of games. And they showed a tremendous amount of competitive spirit. So it's heartbreaking there. But for me, the rapid reaction here, Will, is offensive line deficiency. Dante now needing to get into the lab and trusting his mechanics when pressure comes, and trusting the check down when the pressure comes as well. And then third, that front seven is the bread and butter of this team and is going to keep this team in just about every game the rest of the way.
Yeah, I think those are all great points. And the front seven, let's start with some positives there. I, think this is a unit that showed today just how special they can potentially be. This was a group that really put it all together and, really got in the face of Johnson, the quarterback of Utah. 11 tackles for a loss. Anytime a team can have double-digit tackles for a loss, that's a special unit. And for one particular game, Murphy was in the backfield. K. Madrano may have had one of the best halves of football I think I've ever seen from a UCLA defender. And how weird is it that we're talking about a Chip Kelly team on defense first as opposed to offense, as the rain is starting to come out here in Minnesota. So I'm going to have to move a little bit to get out of the way.
The rain is coming in Minnesota, Will, and the rain came all day from this UCLA front seven in terms of keeping them in this game. And Will, I think we would be remiss to not talk about some of the deficiencies that Utah had as well. I think just in terms of from a fair analysis standpoint, I think Nate Johnson, still only his second career start. You saw him with some happy feet. You saw him cough up the ball. There was some tentativeness when he was throwing the ball. And then Jaquindon Jackson getting hurt early in that game, Will, to the ankle. Utah now down to their second string quarterback, their second wave of running backs, their second wave of tight ends. So you could tell this team wasn't very confident from a vertical explosiveness perspective. And UCLA just packed in that front seven and made them pay and dared them almost to kind of throw the ball down the field. And with the exception of that one drive, Will, at the end of the second quarter, where Johnson was able to find, the running back on the outside on that wheel route and was able to sort of have that play action rollout, it really was a struggle most of the day. Utah took a couple shots down the field and early down and distance when they were up 14-0, when they felt the risk was pretty low. But overall, Kyle Whittingham also played a very conservative game plan once it was 14-0, realizing what a defensive struggle this was and how each team couldn't really move the ball. It was almost kind of water boy-ish where Utah was trying to kind of take a knee from middle of the second quarter onwards because they figured as long as they don't make the big mistake, it was going to be hard for UCLA to move the ball down the field given their offensive line deficiencies. So, and I think, Mark, you said it best. I mean, the punter for Utah was absolutely outstanding. He had 7 punts, 43 yards average, 5 inside the 20, completely flipped the field. And Will, the other element here is you felt there were some opportunities. And there were sort of 4 opportunities in particular for UCLA on the offensive side. That first half, Norwood dropping that ball after, Dante had that dime to Carson Ryan on 3rd and long, in that crossing route, find the soft spot in that zone. And then for Norwood to drop that sort of vertical wiggle route was really heartbreaking. And then in the second half, a couple of opportunities. Sturdivant finally for a deep ball and then missing Loya on that overthrow. Same play as the Norwood play. Couldn't quite get it done there. And then later, the very next drive, missing Ryan on that 4th down where he was wide open, trying to get the ball into Cam Brown. But the football gods seem to sort of even things out, Will, on that second to last drive. 3rd and 27 from UCLA's own 1-yard line. Loya does an outstanding job that turns a 6-7 yard play into a 22-yard gain, sets up a 4th and manageable, and then the deep ball to Ryan, and they finally were able to connect on that Norwood play. So finally got off the goose egg there, Will, but those 3 missed opportunities prior to that could have really swung the game with enough time for UCLA to kind of get back into it.
Yeah, and, I just think there was a lot of mistakes on the O-line's part, Dante's part. The big one, the first pick 6 of the game, just brutal to start with that, especially with how close the game was down the stretch and how good the defense played. You can only really credit the defense for 7 points allowed, given what transpired. And sorry, guys, I had to run inside. It is pouring rain.
No worries. It shows, Will, the passion and the commitment you have. And, Vern, it's a good point. I mean, it's an interesting argument about Chip and the lack of adjustments and making the change at halftime. I disagree for this, and I'll offer you kind of the counter argument here. Dante made throws in this game that there's no way Garbers is capable of making, and certainly not Schlee. I mean, Schlee was 1 for 4 for 15 yards against NC Central with an interception. They would have gotten eaten up in this game. And Schlee maybe would have been able to escape the pocket for a couple more runs and sort of extended drives a little bit. But there was no way that Schlee has the passing ability to be able to move the ball in this defense, and neither does Garbers. So sticking with Moore, I think the wrinkle that he sort of threw in there was he was trying to do that zone stretch play in the first half, both going to the outside with Harden as well as Steele. Realized, Will, that Steele couldn't set that edge as we sort of predicted, and started doing more inside zone with both backs. It was a mix of success because even the middle of that offensive line struggled, but Steele was able to wiggle through for a little bit more yardage there, and then found a way to sort of get Loya a little bit more on those underneath crosses to kind of get some things going. But they're really schematically, it's tough to do anything schematically when your quarterback is just facing the pressure relentlessly within, under 1.8 seconds. So it was just a tough day all around. It was just a level difference today.
He was running for his life, and it was so evident. I mean, the last drive we get the stop on 3rd and 1. You're feeling confident. We can really go down the field, tie the game as we had done on the previous drive, punch it in for 6. And just 3 straight plays of just sack, force blitz, sack on 4th down. It was just a merciless performance out there from the Utah defensive line. And you got to give credit where it's due. They did a great job. Jonah Ellis, 3.5 sacks. I am very encouraged about DeAnton Lynn's defense moving forward. I thought they did an excellent job today, and they came in with a great game plan moving forward. Who are some other guys you would have liked to see and step up, for today's game? I thought the running game could not generate anything really with Carson Steele and TJ Harden, who I had as a breakout player of the game. I would have liked to have seen a little bit more, from the wide receivers, a lot of drops there early in the game. Who would you like to see step up when we take the field in 2 weeks against Washington State?
Will, I'm gonna sort of beat the drum here a little bit more. I think it's Kyle Ford, and I think that there has to be an emphasis here with Ford, because you saw a taste of it with Carson Ryan at the tight end spot, where Ryan got open. He made that great catch in the first half on that 3rd and long crosser, and then made kind of the jump ball catch, which was a little bit of fool's gold there, Will. I mean, it was triple coverage, kind of came away with it. I don't know if that's the recipe you want to keep going to there. That was a little bit of a jump ball, and I think the football gods sort of even things out for some of the misses there with UCLA. But when you look at Kyle Ford and you look at the athleticism that he has the athleticism of a wide receiver and the physicality of a tight end. He's a wide target, a wide body. And I think when that play breaks down for Dante, and when he has to go away from option 1 and 2, when he's starting to feel that rush, we got to get a package going for Kyle Ford because he can just do things that the other wide receivers can't do. And I think Sturdivant did an outstanding job today. He got open at times. Sometimes the ball just wasn't there. Sometimes, it was hard for him to kind of come away with some balls overall. But, I think outside of Ford, I think there were some opportunities even in the secondary, Will, where some plays could have been made. But, Utah didn't throw the ball as much. But I can't really sort of single out anyone, Will, as crazy as it sounds. I think the front seven did what they were supposed to do. The secondary didn't really get beat deep. The running backs just sort of struggled in terms of who they had. And I think this really comes down to getting the offensive line in a situation to be more successful. And if that means you got to go more max protect and you got to bring Habermill in the game and go more 2 tight ends for max protect, that's what you're going to have to do. And so I think Chip is going to have to really think about maybe some more max protect and maybe even getting Kyle Ford in a situation where he's either blocking or receiving, and you kind of go option off of that. So I think that's where the conversation needs to be, Will. I'd like to see a little bit more variety in terms of how they line up at the line of scrimmage to now deal with the fact that this offensive line is going to struggle, because now everyone is going to look at this film and say, look, we know we're not capable of doing what Utah can do in terms of necessarily our scheme and our dudes, but we're going to emulate the approach, and let's see what's going to happen with Dante. Because if we get into these shootouts, can we force him to make a mistake? Can we get an interception? Can we steal a possession?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I'm going to put this on Chip. I would have liked to see some more adjustments, and I know it's hard for any quarterback back there to really deal with it, but, let's get some draw plays going a little bit more. With the blitz coming in, you can kind of find a lane. You're the offensive genius, we know. I mean, this guy is the guy that, really took the spread offense to the next level within college football. Let's get some adjustments out there, man. And it was a 14-0 game. I liked some of the play calls they did, even with the option play that they had with Dante that eventually led to a fumble within the red zone and some of these other things. But I think, altering, the blitz is coming every time and you can't stop it. Just get the ball out quick. do screen passes, do like bubble screens, scenarios where we've proven time and time again. We have a Keegan Jones back there. How many times did the Keegan Jones play a great screenplay last year?
Yeah.
Try to get that going. So Chip, I don't think it comes without blame on this too. And Whittingham just had his way with Chip all day today. And I think we knew what Nate Johnson was. I think we knew that Utah had a bunch of injuries coming into this game. But Chip Kelly, you got to adjust, man. You got to make sure that you're putting the offense first. And I didn't see it. Do you think that's a fair take to go at Chip Kelly?
No, I think it is fair, Will. And I know some of our viewers are feeling that way as well. And I agree. I think this also could have been a Yankoff game, where you're sort of relying where the misdirection is coming from. You could have brought Yankoff into the backfield, kind of had a pseudo two-back situation, maybe even have him as fullback, line him up at tight end, and leverage him more in max protect, leverage him more as a traditional running back, and have him kind of seep out and potentially on a wheel route, the way Utah was able to leverage it. So I think Yankoff could have maybe gotten a little bit more involved. Maybe they could have even gone T formation today, given where the line was struggling, and then kind of throw deep off of the T formation as well. So I think there, to your point, I think there were some wrinkles there that I think he was hesitant to do. Unfortunately, I do think the bubble screen game was going to be tough. Just laterally, there was nothing there. When you see Harden couldn't get to the edge, Steele couldn't get to the edge. That first bubble screen to Loya went for -4. Harden dropped the ball on the edge that wasn't going anywhere. Keegan Jones didn't really want to kind of extend because there was nothing there. You could tell the guys were afraid of kind of getting hit on the outside because there just wasn't anything there. So I think there was an opportunity, though, to create misdirection up the middle with the likes of the Yankoffs, with the likes of the Fords, maybe bring in Atkins in the T formation and then throw deep off of that. So I agree with you.
Earlier, like draw plays, that there could have been
absolutely
a lot of room for those going. At least that's what I do in Madden and NCAA football when the blitz is coming. You got to give them the draw play, keep the defense on edge, make sure that they're dropping back a little bit. I think there could have been something there if they had generated any sense of run game today. Any sense of run game, it would have really opened up the play action, the quick bubble screens, the quick hits. But, boy, the run game was just tough for UCLA today. 32 carries, 9 yards of offense when you account for these sacks that Dante really had, in the quarterback room. So 9 yards of rushing offense. I never thought I'd see the day for this as a fan of UCLA football and Chip Kelly at the helm. Where do we go from here? We get a week off, and then we get Washington State, who is equally – I don't think they have the defense that a Utah does, but Cam Ward, man, that's a special quarterback that's going to be coming into the Rose Bowl. What do we got to do to prepare for this game and get right back on track?
Yeah, Will. I mean, it's a great question. I think the bye week comes at the perfect time. This is sort of now an opportunity to reset. There was a lot of excitement with the team first 3 games, Dante in particular. Now it's about getting back in the lab, and I think there's a couple things that need to happen. I also think Utah sort of played into UCLA's hands a bit in that front seven. I don't think Utah did enough with rolling out Nate Johnson. And the one time they kind of rolled him out early a little bit, and then it seemed like the fumble early in that game where that Medrano recovered spooked Whittingham, and they went really conservative in between the tackles with Nate Johnson, and Johnson struggled with ball security. But I think the key now, a lot of teams are going to be looking to roll guys out. And when you look at the Wards and you look at the Deloras and certainly the Nixes and the Williams, they're going to start moving the pocket on this team because they are understanding how good this front seven is, that if you stay in the box, your line of scrimmage is going to get absolutely moved. So I think defensively now, DeAnton Lynn has to think about, look, my bread and butter is this front seven. What are the schemes that I need to impose when quarterbacks move the pocket to the outside? And that's where DeAnton Lynn's focus needs to be. And I think for Chip, the focus needs to be, how do we get this offensive line in a position of success? How do I get more max protect? Who do I need to bring in? What are the combinations I need to do with this particular line? And then how do I create the security blanket? And whether that security blanket is Ryan, whether that security blanket is Ford, whether that security blanket is Habermill, it just can't be always kind of look into the wide receiver. I love Logan Loya. I love what he's doing, but he's a complementary piece on those underneath crossers when you've established a deep ball, when you've established a run game. Then Loya kind of darting across the middle is really a wrinkle, but he cannot be your primary possession receiver. And so I think that's where Chip's focus has got to be. How do I protect? How do I find my possession receiver? And D'Anton's got to think about, how do I prepare now this defense for the variation when quarterbacks are going to start moving the pocket and rolling out?
Yeah, man. A frustrating game, to say the least. A lot of things coming for UCLA in the next couple of weeks. Madman and myself will be all over that, coming your guys' way. He's going to have some articles coming out this week. We're going to have our normal 2 podcasts coming out this week as well. We'll probably do a more in-depth analyzation of this game. Apologies, guys. I got another bachelor party. I know it's crazy. And they never put them in places with good internet or Wi-Fi. I'm in the middle of
this is if you know, for our viewers out there, for those that think that folks that go to Arizona State are just good looking and party all the time, Will Decker is not breaking that stereotype. So, until the second half of this season, but it's hopefully we get right here with this bye week. And again, we can't sort of rest on our laurels. Washington State is a very explosive team. They just came off of a very resounding victory against Wisconsin. And Wisconsin, mind you, is built very similarly to Utah in terms of how they're constructed in the trenches, their emphasis on the run game, their focus on playing all 3 dimensions, all 3 phases of football. So this is going to be a very difficult game. And then the week after is at Corvallis against Oregon State. And if anybody is the mirror image of Utah in this conference, it's Oregon State. So the Washington State game is really going to be a barometer here to say how much has this team improved going into that Oregon State, because that Oregon State game is going to feel like Utah Part 2.
It really, really is. They got to get up. They got to use the bye week to figure out how they can avoid pressure with Dante Moore in the pocket for UCLA. Thank you guys for tuning in. Bummer of a day, but not a bummer of a season. We got a lot more good stuff coming your way. We get right back on track in 2 weeks. We beat Washington State. We beat Oregon State. And, guys, we're off to the races at that point. Go UCLA. And we will talk to you guys very, very soon.
Absolutely. And Will, I'll just close with this, if you don't mind, is, look, we went into this season saying of the 12 games, UCLA is going to be favored in 9 of them. The 3 games where they're going to be an underdog, at Utah, at Oregon State, at USC. And so the thinking there was, look, if you just play everyone's supposed to win what they're doing, it's 9-3. We know better that UCLA seasons are a little bit more nuanced than that, and UCLA will find a way to win a game that maybe they're not supposed to, and unfortunately maybe drop a game that they're not supposed to. And either way, the projection for this team was in that 9-3 range with a bowl game to get to 10 wins. That's all still very much on the table, and they have an opportunity to now correct this and rectify it against Oregon State and still be in a position where this could even be a 2-loss season. And with the right tiebreak, now you can sort of get into Pac-12 championship talk. So still everything to play for. Dante's still 18 years old, true freshman. It's the biggest game he's ever played in. The last time he was in a stadium that big, the telecast said it was Pee-wee football at Ford Field. Well, it wasn't even high school. It was Pee-wee. He was in middle school. The last time he saw a stadium of this size, it was new for him, but you could already see how much more comfortable he was getting in the second half relative to the first half. All but one drive where UCLA was knocking on the door all came in the second half. Dante was getting more comfortable, getting more used to the speed of the game. If he can just get a little bit more offensive line support, and the clock in his head now has to go faster. And he has to sort of know when to give up on a play, when to check it down, and when to still trust his mechanics. Those are all teachable things, and there's still a lot to be excited about for this UCLA team.
A lot to be excited about, indeed. Much love to all you guys watching. We'll have some new podcasts this week, as I mentioned. Go Bruins, and we'll be back very, very soon.